5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Come to you live. It's been live. Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Hey, welcome to our savvy, smart audience who want something more than the usual blather. You may wonder
what's going on.
What's going on? You should see the three thugs that I took care of. Yeah, they're a lot worse off than I am.
Right.
No such thing. I've had over 65 years of tennis, racquetball, softball, basketball, and it's taken its toll on my shoulder.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I've had complete shoulder replacement. And
wow.
The surgeon said it was the worst shoulder he had ever seen.
That's not good.
It's pretty serious, but recovery is coming.
Yep.
It's slow.
It's here. You are currently recovering.
I am currently recovering.
Yes.
And recovering well, but it's a long, slow process. But as they say in showbiz, Sam, the show must go on. And our show is going on. So what are we starting with?
We're starting with the looming government shutdown. The U.S. is less than 3 hours away from a government shutdown at the time of this live. Congress has until midnight to reach a deal, or federal workers, services, and markets will feel the fallout. The current reporting is stating that the shutdown is all but certain at this point, Dad.
It certainly seems that way, but, you know, as Yogi Berra once said, it ain't over till it's over. Till the clock strikes 12:01, it ain't over. I'm certainly not predicting that they're going to pull the rabbit out of the hat here.
I don't think so.
But it's not impossible. Democrats are not going to give in on health care. They are not going to let Republicans just gut the American healthcare system for middle class and working class Americans. For once, the Democrats are showing a real spine here and not just caving in. And they need 7 Democratic votes in the Senate to push this over the line. It doesn't look like they're going to get it. On the other hand, Republicans are eager for a shutout. They're just saying, throw me right in that briar patch. You know why, Sam?
I think it's a shutdown, not a shutout.
A shutdown, shutout, same thing.
Why do they want
a shutdown?
Because it'll give Trump ultimate power.
Right. This is his excuse to do what he failed to do with Elon Musk and Dodge, and that is to fire a very substantial part of the federal workforce, particularly those who are doing things that he doesn't like providing foreign aid, protecting our environment, making people whole after disasters, doing medical research. One can go on. And Russell Voigt, his head of OMB, Office of Management and Budget, one of the most powerful people in Washington, remember, was one of the architects of Project 2025. He was heard on tape saying he's an avowed Christian nationalist, and he's licking his chops over this. He's seeing this as a real opportunity to put in the kind of crippling budgetary cuts that he envisioned in 2025. Remains to be seen whether those things are going to stick and how big they are. But this shutdown does at least have the potential to be even more significant than the last shutdown during Trump's first term or previous shutdowns of the government. And remember, federal employees, close to half of them won't be working and they won't be getting paid. They will eventually get paid, but I'm not sure that's adequate compensation for people who are of modest means and living paycheck to paycheck. Trump and his rich friends don't have to worry about that kind of thing, but ordinary federal workers do. He's already caused enormous hardship, enormous damage to ordinary people by his draconian firings for no good cause and not to save any money. Study after study have shown that so far the Dodge cuts haven't saved a darn thing in terms of the federal deficit. And, of course, they have no compunctions about blowing a multi-trillion, not billion, multi-trillion-dollar hole in the deficit through big tax cuts that primarily benefit the rich and big corporations.
You're getting a lot of well wishes and speedy recovery and get well soon in the chat.
Well, thank you. That's much appreciated, and it will help speed my recovery.
You think so?
I think so.
Nice.
In a few months, I'll be back on the track.
The good news is the worst is over. He had to get surgery. The surgery happened. Now, hopefully, it's just a slow climb back to. I mean, he's got a bionic arm now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not fun, having to sleep with this. To have this on all day. It's a little heavy. It kind of chafes.
Right.
But in the end, you know what they say, better than ever. Couldn't be worse. As I said, he's the worst shoulder he's ever seen. So it's only going to get better, and thanks for the well wishes.
Yeah, if you've seen the show, you've even seen him. He was in a lot of pain. So he's now got a metal ball in his shoulder socket, so there shouldn't be any pain whatsoever.
Eventually, right.
Not in the short term.
No.
All right. Moving past the shutdown.
Yes, next topic.
Probably by the time we're live next week, the government will be shut down.
Yes, very, very sad. No good's going to come of that.
No, I can't imagine.
People are going to be suffering hardships, and more cruel and needless cuts are going to take place.
Right. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth railed against so-called, quote, woke culture in a speech to America's top generals, laying out new standards for the military. In the same meeting, Trump told Pentagon leaders to, quote, handle the enemy from within, justifying domestic military action and framing U.S. cities as training grounds.
This is arguably the most important and the most frightening meeting the American military has held outside of wartime. It is truly frightening. Whenever you think the threat to our democracy could not become worse, it becomes worse. It's hard to imagine a more clear and present danger to our democracy when you put together what Hegseth, the totally unqualified Defense Secretary, I guess they want to go back to call it the Department of War like it was, in the 19th century. But regardless, when you put together his comments with those of Donald Trump, it represents a truly unprecedented, dangerous, frightening intrusion in our democracy. As Sam indicated, what Hegseth says is forget everything else. Whatever, I'm sure 90% of MAGAs don't know what woke means, but I'm not going to get into that. So forget about woke, forget about equality, forget about diversity. The military is going to be about only one thing. Lethality, defined as their sole mission, is going to be to kill people and to break things. You got that, Sam? That's their sole mission. Did he say anything about training them in law enforcement?
No.
Did he say anything about training them in crowd control?
No.
Not a darn thing. And this becomes incredibly important when I'm going to put together what Hegseth had to say with what Trump had to say. And, there's been a lot of good analysis of each part of it, but I haven't yet seen a comprehensive analysis that puts the two things together. And we're going to do that right now. Okay, wow. So forget everything but lethality, killing people, and breaking things. Quote, we unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. None of this Geneva Convention human rights stuff. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. Intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. All right, now put that together with who Trump defines as the enemy against whom this new lethal, unleashed military will be directed against. Does he talk about Russia, Sam?
No.
Does he talk about China?
No.
Does he talk about North Korea or Iran?
No.
No. Who does he talk about?
The enemy within.
The enemy within. Other Americans. You know where that phrase, the enemy within, came from, Sam?
Joseph McCarthy.
Joseph McCarthy. Exactly. The most notorious violator of civil liberties, humane norms, the rule of law, the Constitution. You know, he lives in infamy, and the last person you should be modeling it on. But here's what he said in his famous 1950 speech, in which he falsely claimed he had all this evidence of communist infiltration in the State Department. Just like Trump, McCarthy's claims are all built on the big lie. He said, when a great democracy is destroyed, it will not be because of enemies from without, but rather because of enemies from within. And that speech became known as the enemy within speech. And of all persons and all approaches to model yourself on in the 21st century, you would have to search far and wide, and I'm not sure you could do it, find any American worse than Joseph McCarthy. And there is a connection, by the way, between Trump and McCarthy. Do you know that, Sam?
Roy Cohn.
Roy Cohn. When Trump has been in trouble with the law for over 50 years. Somehow, some way, he has weaseled his way out of it and never been held accountable. He was first found by the U.S. Department of Justice to have violated the Fair Housing Act by discriminating against minorities in rental properties in his real estate company. And I looked at the evidence. It's in my book, The Case for Impeachment. It was incredibly strong. So who did he hire, Sam?
Cohn.
Roy Cohn, McCarthy's notorious red-baiting lawyer, whose motto was delay, deflect, obstruct, attack. And that's exactly what they did. And Trump got out of it, and that's been his MO since. So not only are we drawing here on the McCarthy precedent, but there is a very specific connection between Trump and McCarthy. So who's the enemy that Trump is talking about? If it's not China, Russia, North Korea, he said, last month I signed an executive order to provide training for a quick reaction force from the military, I add that can help quell civil disturbances. This is going to be a big thing for the people in this room. Who are the people in the room, Sam?
Military folk.
The military leaders, not sheriffs or police chiefs, but leaders of the U.S. military. This is going to be a big thing for the people in this room because it's the enemy from within. Thank you very much, Joe McCarthy. And we have to handle it before it gets out of control. It won't get out of control once you're involved. Further said, we're under invasion from within, no different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. It's a war from within. He went on to say, where are we going to train these military in killing people and breaking things?
U.S. cities.
U.S. citizens. Not training them in crowd control or police tactics, but in punishing violence on the enemy with no rules of engagement. In U.S. cities with U.S. citizens. He said, he told Pete Hegseth that the U.S. should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military. Risa Brooks, you don't have to take my word for it. She's a Marquette University professor who is an authority on the relationship between the military and civil society. she warned that what's going on here is so dangerous because, quote, what's happening is part of a larger project aimed at promoting the military's partisan alignment with the administration. To the generals and admirals in attendance, it signals that overt ideological conformity with the administration is not just appropriate, but key to their career advancement and to protecting their units and commands, Brooks said. Trump said, quote, if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future. Brooks comments that the ultimate aim here is that people will no longer expect the military to serve the public at large, but that its goal and purpose is to advance the interests of one faction or party in politics. Exactly the way every dictatorship in the history of the world has used the military, not to defend and protect us, but to defend and protect the partisan interests of the regime, even if it means unleashing the military to break and kill not foreign adversaries, but our own people within our own cities. Virginia Berger, a senior defense analyst at the Project on Government Oversight, says, who is the adversary? Who are we increasing lethality for? Is it China? Is it Russia? Or is it so they can exercise some degree of control over the American people? It's certainly in there if you read closely. This is really frightening. A very famous Asian sage said, quote, in order to rally people, government needs enemies. And if they do not have a real enemy, they will invent one in order to mobilize us. There's no enemy from within destroying our country in our cities or anywhere else in America. Like so much else in this administration, it is a self-serving fabrication to enable him to achieve his goal of suppressing the rights and liberties of us, the American people. The great Siddhartha once said, it is a man's own mind, not his enemy or foe, that lures him to evil ways. And that's exactly what we are seeing here. Now, this is also clearly not only fundamentally wrong, immoral, and dangerous, and contrary to the basic tenets of our democracy, it is also contrary to law. Do you know what law I'm talking about here, Sam?
No.
It's called the Posse Comitatus Act. And it was passed in the late 19th century in order to precisely avoid, not promote, the situation that Donald Trump is talking about, and that is the use of the military for domestic law enforcement, except in very special circumstances, which don't come close to existing here. The Posse Comitatus Act explicitly prohibits, you can check it out, it's just a one-line law. It expressly prohibits the use of the military for domestic law enforcement, precisely to avoid the kind of situation that Donald Trump is promoting today, and that is the use of the military against its own people, which Congress understood even back then was the royal road toward dictatorship, something we had shed our blood fighting a revolution against. We were fighting a revolution against a king, a despot. And that's a fundamental reason why they passed the Posse Comitatus law, and precisely why Trump is so intent on breaking it, since a critical element of authoritarianism is always the control of the military and the use of the military to terrorize its own people. I repeat, to terrorize its own people. There were also a slew of lies in Trump's speech. Of course, he digressed into all kinds of things. He said, we have the strongest military in the world. Quote, you never heard Biden say that. Biden said that numerous times. For example, in 2023, he said, our U.S. military, and this is not hyperbole, I've said it for the last 2 years, is the strongest military in the history of the world. Not just the strongest in the world, in the history of the world. You know, Trump doesn't care that his lies can be directly, immediately, and easily refuted by public available information. It absolutely does not matter one whit to him. He also lied about how much money we gave to Ukraine, saying it's $350 billion when it's well under half of that. He lied about his ramping up the spending of NATO in his first term. He said he settled 7 wars. At least 3 or 4 of those claims are blatantly false, and others are extremely shaky. He claims Congo and Venezuela are sending us the remnants of their prisons and asylums. Absolutely no evidence to that effect. He claimed that 25 million migrants entered the country under Biden. In fact, throughout the Biden term, the federal government recorded under 11 million nationwide encounters with migrants, well under half the number. And that's not the full account either, since a great many of those were rapidly and immediately expelled from the country. The so-called getaways, as estimated by House Republicans, was roughly 2.2 million, nowhere near the 25 million that Trump claimed. And of course, he repeated his usual lie about the 2020 election being rigged, claiming Russia would never have invaded Ukraine if the election wasn't rigged. Of course, he told us once you elected him, he would solve the Ukraine war in one day. I don't know how many days we've gone, but probably more than 250, and we're nowhere near solving the Ukraine war. But I cannot tell you how dangerous it is to provoke and establish a military designed to kill without restraint, to break things without restraint, to be unleashed, and unleashing it on your own people for fabricated reasons. There is no crisis in our cities that requires the use of the military. Mayors and governors are not asking for it. In fact, they are fundamentally rejecting it. But now we have the building of this rapid deployment force of military personnel in violation of the Posse Comitatus law, in violation of the preservation of our democracy, directed against our own people. Nothing could be more frightening.
You know, I didn't think about it like that in terms of, not, you know, what Hegseth was saying and what Trump was saying and putting those together.
Nobody has.
I was sort of thinking about them as both kind of crazy in their own right. But when you put them together, that's pretty frightening. Hey, we're going to create this kill at all costs, break things military. Oh, also, we're pointing at within.
Right.
That's pretty frightening.
Yes.
You know, it's sad because I feel like the American public after Vietnam, after failed wars in the Middle East, it felt like we were finally maybe going to come out of this militarized military industrial complex way of thinking about things. But it seems like this administration is trying to do the opposite. They're trying to make it more lethal, more brutal.
Which is the opposite of what they said. They criticized these wars. They criticized the militarization.
And I feel like, again, we've learned so much from Vietnam to now, and they're just erasing all that the American people have learned about war and how, war is hell. When you talk to people who have served, when you talk to people who have been in action, it's literal hell on earth. And the fact that somehow we're erasing all those lessons and going back to, an Attila the Hun style, kill at all costs, break things at all costs.
But directed against us.
Right, that too, right.
It's bad enough if you're doing it for foreign wars. It's so much worse when you're directing it against your own people.
Another thing Hegseth was railing on about was military standards and making sure that all standards are male standards.
Yes, whatever that means.
Whatever that means exactly. And what is an 18-year-old expected to have the same standards as a 45-year-old who's still serving? Yeah, none of that makes sense. It's all
totally muddled. But he says, but I'm not really, denigrating the role of women in the military. Of course you are.
Of course he is, yeah.
This is the same guy who posted and praised a video by this far-right white nationalist, white Christian nationalist pastor who advocated ending the voting rights for women. He said vote should be by household and should be cast by the male head of household. And this is a video that Hegseth posted and praised. And you're going to have us believe that he really believes in equality for women?
And the interesting thing is, as of 2023, there was 225,000 women in U.S. active duty military. So it seems like if he wants the best force in the world, a lot of that is including women just for the sake of numbers, right? So if he's going to eliminate hundreds of thousands of personnel from our military, wouldn't that weaken our military?
This is the big lie also about diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action. The big lie is this is designed to let unqualified people into business or schools or the military. Charlie Kirk was constantly harping on this. Oh, if I see a black pilot, I've got to worry about it. The opposite is true. The whole purpose of affirmative action and DEI is to open the door to opportunity for qualified people who were shut out previously because of their race or their gender. So the whole purpose of DEI or affirmative action, once again, is exactly the opposite of what they claim it to be. And by the way, for all these claims, what evidence are they presenting?
None.
Zero. Absolutely none.
Most people who I've heard talk about this who are in the military say that all the women they served with were essential, great soldiers, et cetera, et cetera.
There's not a study I know of which says, opening doors to the military or to minorities has weakened our military. And by the way, if you believe that the mission of the military is actually a little bit bigger than just breaking things and killing people, that they occupy countries, right? They want cooperation from civilians, right, to help protect them from terrorists. They want sources of information. So they've got to be something more than just renegade killers. The mission is not just limited to that.
And, this idea of this warrior killing machine, I would argue that way of sort of structure around our military has made America less safe. I mean, if you think about the brutality that the U.S. military has done to many countries around the world, that has come back to bite us in the ass. If you talk about 9/11.
There's a whole book on this called Blowback.
Right. Terrorism, extremism. And
yes.
You could draw a direct line to brutal militarization in the U.S. to the, you know what I mean? So this
Absolutely.
idea that this killing machine army makes us safer is, I actually think, the opposite of reality.
Yeah, and as I said, you need to have good relations with civilians abroad. Are you just going to become an occupying terrorist army like the Nazis were, during World War II in most of Europe?
Yeah.
That doesn't work. You need to establish good relations with people of other countries, and not to mention our own people.
Right.
That's an essential part of keeping us safe and keeping the military safe.
Yeah.
Can you pass me my drink?
Really quickly, thank you to Guy for your gifted memberships, and thank you to Krasimir for your gifted memberships. I just wanted to make sure I got those in.
Good.
Before we moved on.
We appreciate that.
You want your drink?
I want my drink, and then we'll go to the next topic.
Okay, 1 second.
I'm a little handicapped in what I can reach.
You are?
Just a little.
I had no idea.
Hard to tell.
I've been taking care of this guy every day, all day.
He's been doing a great job. Couldn't make it without him.
All right, are you ready for our next topic, Dad? Anything else you want to say about? I mean, I want to say this. Actually, I have one more thing to say. Donald Trump is the most divisive figure in America today.
Maybe in America since the Civil War.
I don't understand why people continue to support this man who is the most divisive figure. I mean, yeah, maybe you can find fringe people who say crazier things, but he is the most powerful man in the country, the most powerful man in the world, arguably. And the rhetoric he uses, the things he says, the things he does is horrific. I mean, I just can't wrap my mind around how people can't see how damaging Trump is to this country, how divisive he is, how much hate and fear he spreads.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
And here's, the other fallacy of this, both sides. They'll compare Donald Trump and they'll find some fringe figure in the Democratic Party.
Right.
Who has no influence, no power, no nothing. No one's ever heard of them.
Right.
And they'll equate that with what the most powerful person in the world is saying and doing.
Right. There's no doubt in my mind at this point, especially after today, that he is the most divisive figure in this country, period. Nobody even comes close. Again, maybe you can find people out there or Twitter trolls
fringe, but
who say crazy stuff.
Someone who has some power. And
right. If you take into account how much power he has and his rhetoric, he's by far, it's not even close.
It's not close.
There's no, the right can sit here and, again, name all these false equivalencies. It is not true. He is the most divisive figure in the United States.
By a huge margin.
All right. Our next topic is Trump has given Hamas 3 or 4 days to respond to his Gaza ceasefire proposal, upping pressure on a fragile Middle East peace effort.
Last time I was in the Middle East, I met with scholars there. I was giving some lectures. They all said, nothing is as it seems in the Middle East. You can't take anything literally. I actually commend Trump for at least trying, although, he turned a blind eye for months upon months throughout his first term to the atrocities committed by Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet that have made Israel the pariah of the world. But I would hope that, there'd be some prospect for peace. I am skeptical because I've been watching this for 60 some odd years, but I'm willing to have an open mind about it.
One thing I don't understand is it seemed like when Biden and Trump were sort of transitioning, there was some sort of peace deal, and then it seemed to sort of vanish in this thin air, and I don't see anybody talking about that. I'm like, what happened to that? I guess it just literally just nothing happened.
Just blew up.
So
in large part because you've got two bad actors. You have Netanyahu on the one hand and Hamas on the other hand. You don't have any honest brokers to deal with creating
But what's different between this deal and that original deal they had?
It doesn't seem much different.
Right. I just can't wrap my mind around it.
At this point, Netanyahu thinks he's wrought enough destruction and death, and maybe Hamas feels, we just can't take anymore. I don't know. We'll see. As I said, I've seen so many deals come and go over the years.
Yeah. Well, like you said,
Bill Clinton had a deal, way back when that went up in smoke.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, let's hope it works.
Of course.
But
the other thing that makes me skeptical is you just don't put something on paper. It's going to take months, maybe even years of intense follow-up. And whether Donald Trump is capable of that or not is an open question.
Right. All right, our final topic before we move on to questions. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission just dropped a core tool for probing workplace discrimination, abandoning disparate impact analysis in favor of narrower AI-driven reviews.
This is horrific. This again shows that this whole thing, we want to enforce the civil rights laws. Of course, we only want to enforce them in a phony way on supposed anti-Semitism so we can go after the universities that we hate. But real civil rights we're totally bailing out on. And this is an incredible bailout. What this says is you cannot establish discrimination by disparate impact, that there's got to be some overt racism involved in the policy. Why is this so horrific? Because historically, some of the most discriminatory, worst measures have not been on their face racial. They look racial neutral, but their effect is perniciously discriminatory. The poll tax, Sam. Was the poll tax designed that only black people had to pay the poll tax?
No.
No. But of course, black people, by far at the bottom of the economic ladder, were most burdened. Well, the literacy tests, black people were most burdened, even though it was not explicitly racial. So this notion that a law or a practice cannot be discriminatory unless it's racial on its face is utter nonsense, contradicted by a long history of discriminatory practices and measures. And this deprives anyone who cares about civil rights of an essential tool to prevent discrimination. It just shows the utter hypocrisy of Donald Trump's approach to civil rights.
All right, with that, we will move on to questions. Before we do that, we have 1,100 people watching, but only 450 likes. Make sure you like the stream. It helps us a lot. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you know we're live. Remember that donations and members get priority on questions.
Yes, we can use the donations and members.
You all right? You comfortable?
How much time do we have left?
23 minutes.
I'm good to go.
You sure?
Yep, let's get the questions.
Let's get the questions.
Let's pump up that audience.
Let's pump up that
the donations.
Pump it up.
Yeah.
I was going to go like this, but then I realized
I'm not going to go like
you only have one arm.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Not bad.
Is the mic close enough to you think?
Yeah, no.
No, hold on one second. Everybody hold for a second. That's better. You good?
Yeah. You know, I'll remind you of something I've said before.
Okay, remind me.
Historically, go back to Dwight Eisenhower, Republican president I admired. And, you know, he was a great general. He understood war. And he said, nothing will get solved in the Middle East until we solve Israel-Palestine. And there is no military solution to that problem.
Right.
And he resisted efforts to engage in Middle Eastern wars.
Right.
And in general, Eisenhower, quite rightly, was very skeptical about solving problems in distant lands about which we knew little by military means. And he certainly was prescient given, you know, what happened in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq.
I just showed my butt to everybody, apparently. Sorry about that.
Not good.
Two more announcements. We've actually now passed 20 million views on the channel. So
wow.
Thank you all for that.
Thank you.
And it's also, apparently it's been 3 years to the day that we posted the very first episode of Lichtman Live.
Is that right?
I think so. So I think we did like 2 or 3 episodes and then we stopped and we took like a long break and then we started again and then we've been consistent since then.
Wow.
But I think from the very first episode, it's exactly 3 years to the day. Is that possible? Let me double check.
I didn't think so, but if you say so.
That's what Savannah told me.
I believe her.
Let me see if I can find it.
All right, let's get to questions, though. I know they're all waiting.
Our first question is, do you have any messaging advice for Dems with regards to the impending shutdown?
Yes. It's very important that they do not just bend over, but put the blame squarely on Republicans who control the Senate, the House, and the presidency, and who obstinately want to undermine the health care on which we all depend and want to use this as an excuse for further firings of qualified federal workers which is going to redound enormously to the detriment of every American. Keep your eye on the big picture.
So what's today? Today's the 28th? Yeah. Our first episode of Lichtman Live.
Today's the 30th.
Oh, today's the 30th?
Yes.
Oh. So we're 2 days off.
Wow, but it was September 28th?
Our first episode ever was September 28th, 2022.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
And it was called, Is Trump Finally Done?
Oh! Wow.
I think the
Talk
answer
about
to
Freddy
that,
Krueger.
I think your answer to that was yes at the time.
Probably.
And
I don't remember, but
he's about as far from done as he's ever been, I guess.
I guess if he lives.
All right. $10 donation from Limited Light. They say, just wanted to let you know I finished reading 13 Cracks today. Should I read Coming Up Short before picking up my next Lichtman book?
No, pick up your next Lichtman book. It'll fit right in, conservative at the core.
Right.
Which just came out just about a month ago.
What are your thoughts on Trump RX? Have you been following this?
I have, and, I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. Like so much with Trump, it's unclear what actually represents, other than a chance to put his name on something. But, they killed efforts to bring down drug prices, and now they're claiming to do something positive in that regard. If they do, I'll give them credit, but I'm holding judgment on that.
Yeah, I haven't really followed it either.
Yeah, it's not clear exactly what it represents, whether it's accessible to people.
Why is it called Trump? Of course, he has to put his name on it.
He got to put his name on RX prescriptions.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying, why does it have to be Trump RX?
Because he's got to put his name on everything.
This is from Diane. They say, I was surprised at the treatment of the European players at the Ryder Cup last weekend. Golf's supposed to be a gentleman's game, and it was held in New York. Your thoughts? I thought it was pretty awful.
I agree it was awful.
What happened? I didn't even hear about this.
Slurs and jeering of European players at the Ryder Cup, the competition between the U.S. and Europe. And I thought it was despicable as well. But, these are the times we live in, unfortunately, when this kind of behavior has become normalized.
The tons?
The what?
You sound like you said the tons. These are the tons we live in.
The times.
These are the tons we live in.
Yes.
I didn't even know that happened, to be honest. Has there ever been less governance by the federal government? The decree business for dodgy policies that are allowed to continue until SCOTUS rules something like a short-circuiting of the normal process.
I'm not sure I understand that question.
I guess he's asking, essentially everything's being ruled from executive order, and then we just wait around until SCOTUS rules. Congress is essentially doing nothing.
No, we have never seen so much rule by executive order, certainly not outside of wartime. It might have to go back to the Civil War to find anything comparable. That's exactly right. And it's without precedent. And it's also without precedent for all of this rocket docket rulings. You know what rocket docket is, Sam?
Take it up really quick and rule.
Yeah, and don't have full briefing, oral argument, don't have opinions, just rule on it. When something critical was coming up that absolutely demanded an immediate answer, and that was Trump's claim for presidential immunity, they delayed for month after month after month for no good reason until it was too late for the American people to know whether he was guilty of what he was charged with or not. And on vastly less important matters, boy, they are right on it, sometimes in just a matter of a very few weeks.
Congress did pass a massive spending bill, though.
Yes. Spending and taxing bill.
Right. Other than that, I haven't heard much of what they're doing, though.
No, I don't think they've done much of anything.
Christianity was focal in Charlie Kirk's funeral. Was Trump jealous of the piety not directed at him? Authoritarians view religion as competition.
Not so. Authoritarians often, as Trump has done, or Orban has done, or Putin has done, they incorporate and use and exploit religion. So it's not correct that religion is always in competition with authoritarianism. Rather, religion, particularly organized religion, which is itself something of an authoritarian system. I mean, look at the Catholic Church. It's a monarchy, right?
Right.
And what's the role of women in the Catholic Church?
Zip.
Look at the Southern Baptist Convention. What's the role of women there?
Zip.
Zip. So yeah. So a lot of authoritarian tendencies are also present in certain elements of organized religion, which is one reason why organized religion can be co-opted by authoritarians.
This is from Barbandry. They say, I've been gifted a membership. Hooray. Thank you, community. What has been done in the past with other rogue presidents who were doing things that the majority of the country didn't like/want? And what the people/courts/legislatures, what did they do about those oversteps?
Well, the classic example, of course, was Watergate. And we had several investigations going on. The special prosecutor, the House impeachment inquiry, and the special select Senate committee on Watergate. And the process worked, at least post facto, eventually. That is, the House Judiciary Committee did vote 3 articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon. The leadership of the Republican Party, including House Senate Minority Leader Hugh Scott, former presidential candidate Barry Goldwater, they went to see Richard Nixon and said, you're going to be impeached for sure, and you're going to be convicted. We maybe can muster a dozen votes, but the 2/3 votes are there, and that forced Richard Nixon to resign. He didn't resign out of the goodness of his heart because he was remorseful or thought he did anything wrong. He resigned because he was forced to. Better to resign than become the first president to both be impeached and removed from office by the Senate. 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, in 1977, in a David Frost interview, rather than being remorseful, he was just the opposite. He said, if the president does it, it's not illegal. And by the way, that sparked a huge bipartisan backlash. Donald Trump has said the same thing or worse several times, nothing close to the backlash.
Someone wanted to make clear that women do have a role in the Catholic Church. It's not zero.
No, I understand that.
Right.
And we were being hyperbolic.
True.
But they don't have a leadership role.
Right.
They're not ordained priests. They're not bishops. They're not archbishops. They're not cardinals. They're not popes. For the most part, they perform housekeeping or administrative tasks. I talk about that quite a bit in my book, Conservative at the Core. A lot of things I admire about Catholicism. I think it's got a lot of strengths, but its treatment of women and its hierarchical structure is, in my view, an issue.
Right. What out of all the hugely important issues that are buffering our American society do you two think is the most important issue for us to keep in mind, keep working on? Are we inevitably facing complete breakdown and disaster here?
The one thing we've got to try to keep intact, the one hope we have, it's not the Congress, it's not the courts, elections. You've got to replace the current office holders. And that means we've got to do everything in our power to vote, to get others to vote, to organize, and to make sure that we have free and fair elections. And, this use of the military, many believe, and I'm not sure they're wrong, is a prelude to the use of the military to stifle free elections in 2026 and 2028.
I would say the most important issue to keep in mind is to try to quell this American oligarchy that seems to be.
But you're not going to do it unless you replace them in power.
I don't disagree with you that elections are just as important, if not more important. But I think the oligarchy can also operate even with elections still at play. I mean, we've seen inequality and we've seen the oligarchy grow over the last 40 years, and elections have been pretty, there have been issues, but they've been pretty stable over that time. And we've seen inequality go like this. So I think the oligarchy can grow even in
no question. But if
fair elections.
But if you can't have free and fair elections, then everything else falls apart. Free and fair elections may not solve everything, but they are a necessity.
Right. Professor, as a Harvard graduate, have you ever walked the Boston Freedom Trail?
I have.
What's your favorite part?
The old cemetery, no doubt. Maybe I'm a bit morbid, but I find that extremely interesting and inspiring.
Why did Western powers cooperate with Gaddafi at times, despite his record of repression?
The history of Western powers during the Cold War is cooperating with some of the worst, most brutal dictators around the world. We had the Reagan Doctrine, for example, very explicitly said, we are going to support any anti-communist force around the world. We don't care if it's not democratic. We don't care if it violates human rights. We are going to support it. For example, supporting the Contras in Nicaragua, which were tied to the old Somoza dictatorship and had all kinds of human rights abuses on their record. But that's only just one of innumerable examples. We supported some of those horrible dictators in Asia and Africa.
I lived in Boston for almost 3 years. I don't think I ever did the Freedom Trail.
I thought you did it with me. I think we did, long time ago, when you were first there.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Professor, in the spring of 2010, I joined the Washington semester program on the Tenley campus at American University. I'm almost certain that you were a guest lecturer for Professor Diane Lowenthal's class. I distinctly recall being told that Obama has to be FDR multiple times in this particular session, and I'm almost certain that it was you. Does this ring a bell?
Absolutely. I don't remember the particular class, but I was certainly saying that at the time, and unfortunately, he was only 50% at most of FDR. That is, like FDR, he was very important for his policy innovations, the Affordable Care Act, the stimulus bill, the bailouts that kept us from descending into another depression. But unlike FDR, who was a great politician and party builder, Obama sadly fell down on those criteria. Democrats suffered devastating defeats during his time in office.
How you feeling, Dad? We can wrap up now, or we can keep pushing if you want to.
What time is it?
It's 9:54.
Push.
Push?
Push.
This is a $10 donation from Secular Monk.
Oh, nice.
They say, one of my best friends lives in Portland, where the ICE building is. He has never seen anything other than peaceful protest there. Quote, training troops in U.S. cities is inciting trouble.
Absolutely. And, and what Trump did in his first term in dealing with the Black Lives Matter movement proves that. I discussed that at some length in this new book, Conservative at the Core, citing various studies of the failed response on the part of the Trump administration. And by the way, I read a report, I don't know if it's true, that some of the footage that Fox was showing to demonstrate chaos in Portland, some of it was from 5 years earlier during the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, not today. And all of the officials in Portland says there's no crisis, there's no chaos, there's no turmoil. Yes, there are protests, but they are overwhelmingly peaceful. And I thought protests was as American as apple pie. I thought, the right to petition your government was sacrosanct in America, even enshrined in our Constitution.
This is a $20 donation from Philip H. They say,
oh, one of our old buds.
All of Trump's actions result in small businesses going bankrupt. and large corporations consolidating and getting bigger. This is a purposeful theft and consolidation of corporate power. I'm losing hope we can come back from this.
It's very, very serious.
That's what I was saying earlier.
That's what Sam was saying, and he's absolutely right. You know, income and wealth inequality has soared in recent decades, and our economy is becoming much more consolidated. We're seeing that in your area, right, in the entertainment industry. What's happening there?
Jeez. Massive consolidations of massive media companies. Skydance bought CBS, now, or Paramount, and now Paramount is considering a merger with Warner Brothers, and a massive consolidation.
And that's particularly serious in businesses that deal with communication and information, because they tremendously influence what we believe and how we think. And to the extent they become conformist to just a few large enterprises, which have enormous conflicts of interest with government, is truly another crushing blow to our democracy. I'll take one more question.
Okay, one more question. Let's see.
If there isn't one, that's fine. I'm starting to hurt a little.
Okay.
But I'll take one if there is one.
Was Woodrow Wilson an authoritarian?
Woodrow Wilson is one of the more enigmatic, difficult presidents to pull down. He certainly had some authoritarian tendencies, particularly with the control of information during World War I, the Office of War Information, the use of the Sedition Acts to quell dissent. He was very much of a segregationist. But on the other hand, you know, it was under his watch, although reluctantly, that we got women's suffrage. He was a supporter of the direct election of senators, a lot of other progressive era reforms that did improve our democracy. So, you know, we could spend an entire class on Woodrow Wilson and probably not come to a final resolution.
Okay, with that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for this evening. The first Lichtman Live with the bionic armed man.
Not quite bionic yet, but on the way.
Yeah. Well, there's a piece of metal in there. So
there is a piece of metal and plastic in there, yeah.
So if you see him with a shoulder strap or a shoulder sling, you're going to see him like that for quite a bit.
A few weeks anyway.
Don't worry. You know, he's on the road to recovery. A couple of quick shout outs to Mandalus, who donated $20 and says, hit that like button. Miles Wolf donated $10 and said, feel better, Allan. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Blazers donated $20 and says, Dr. Lichtman, thanks for showing up every week and delivering facts to the people. Take care of that super shoulder.
Yeah.
Also, thank you to Westy Mama for a $50 donation. Susie Garcia, Limited Light. All right, Dad. What are your final words to the people on this night? I mean, we're now maybe 2 hours away from a government shutdown. The enemy from within. Go.
If this is the new golden age, I'd hate to see what the age of lead would look like.
Seriously. All right, folks. Thank you and good night.
Good night.